My fiancée spent our wedding budget on cosmetic surgery without telling me so. I called off everything and posted the receipts with her. Before, after photos, online I'm a 30-year-old guy. And for 2 years, I thought I was marrying my soulmate. Her name is Chloe, the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking into it. She was beautiful, confident, ambitious, and had this energy that made me believe we could take on the world together. When I proposed to her under the old oak tree in her parents' backyard, she cried and said it was everything she'd ever dreamed of. In that moment, I thought I'd found forever. We started planning our wedding almost immediately. Chloe dove into Pinterest boards and venue lists while I focused on the financial side. We opened a shared savings account, both putting a set amount aside every month. It felt symbolic, like every deposit was another promise we were building together. She'd send me links to venues and dresses late at night, her excitement practically radiating through the screen. I loved that about her, how passionate she was about creating something beautiful. But somewhere along the way, I started noticing little things. Chloe became fixated on how everything would look. She'd scroll through influencer wedding photos for hours, whispering about how their pictures felt more cinematic. Once, she sighed and said, "I just want to look perfect in every shot, you know?" I laughed it off at the time, assuming it was harmless pre-wedding nerves. Still, there were moments that lingered in the back of my mind, like when she asked if we could adjust the budget to hire a luxury content creator instead of a normal photographer, or when she spent hours editing selfies before posting them. She said it was all part of branding. But it didn't sit right with me. I told myself it was nothing. Every bride wants her wedding to be perfect. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that Chloe wasn't just chasing a dream wedding. She was chasing something. And soon, I'd find out what that really meant. The weeks after our engagement felt like a blur of excitement. Chloe was in full wedding planner mode, swatches of fabric everywhere, binders filled with color palettes, and hours spent on Instagram stalking wedding influencers. Every morning started with a new idea. What if we had a champagne wall? Or do you think we could fly in a floral designer from LA? Her enthusiasm was infectious at first, and I wanted nothing more than to make her happy. We agreed to keep things within budget, though our shared account had become sacred, the foundation of our big day. Every month we'd both transfer money and update a spreadsheet I'd made. I was proud of how disciplined we were. It felt like teamwork, like we were preparing for a life built on mutual trust. But Chloe's focus on appearances started to shift from the event itself to herself. She began obsessing over her body, talking about toning up for the dress or getting minor touch-ups before the big day. Once, while flipping through a bridal magazine, she said, "I don't want to just look good, I want to look unforgettable." I brushed it off as normal pre-wedding jitters. Everyone wants to look their best, right? Still, her comments started getting heavier. "Do you think people will compare me to your ex?" she asked one night, half joking, but not really. Another time, she stared at her reflection and muttered, "No amount of makeup fixes genetics." I wrapped my arms around her and told her she was perfect as she was. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The next day, she called me from work, excited about finding a new makeup artist who specialized in camera-ready transformations. I laughed and told her to go for it. After all, it was her day back then. I didn't realize that phrase, "It's my day," would slowly become her justification for everything that followed. As the wedding date drew closer, the tone of our relationship began to change. Chloe wasn't as open as she used to be. She started taking phone calls in another room, lowering her voice when I walked by. When I'd ask who it was, she'd just say, "Vendors, babe, don't stress." But it didn't sound like vendors. It sounded like secrets. One afternoon, while updating our wedding budget spreadsheet, I noticed something strange. A withdrawal for $2,000 labeled personal expense. When I brought it up, Chloe smiled and waved it off. "Oh, that's for a bridesmaid surprise," she said, kissing my cheek. "You'll see soon." I wanted to believe her. I really did. So I told myself not to make a big deal out of it. Love, after all, is built on trust. But small inconsistencies began piling up. She canceled our venue walkthrough at the last minute because she had a doctor's appointment. Another time, she claimed to be meeting her mom for lunch, but came home late, flushed, and evasive. I didn't want to be the paranoid fiancé, but the pit in my stomach kept growing. Even her friends started acting weird. When I mentioned the wedding fund one evening, her maid of honor shifted uncomfortably and quickly changed the topic. Later, I overheard Chloe whispering to her on the phone, "He won't find out. It's fine." That night, while she showered, I looked at our shared account again and froze. More withdrawals. Thousands gone, little by little, all marked under vague labels like Misk and Beauty. My heart was pounding, but I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was paying deposits. Maybe she was planning a surprise honeymoon. But deep down, I knew something didn't add up. And as much as I wanted to believe in Chloe, that quiet, knowing doubt was starting to drown out everything else. A few weeks later, we met with our wedding planner to finalize the last big payments: the venue, catering, and photographer. As the planner opened her laptop, her smile faded. "It looks like your deposit didn't go through," she said gently. My stomach tightened. That wasn't possible. We had more than enough saved. I glanced at Chloe, expecting confusion, maybe embarrassment. But instead, she froze, her face pale. When we got home, I asked to check the account together. She hesitated, saying, "Babe, you're overreacting. I'll handle it." My patience finally cracked. "Handle what, Chloe? Half our wedding fund is missing." She snapped then, accusing me of being controlling. "You act like I'm stealing from you. Can't I do anything without you micromanaging?" Her voice echoed through the apartment, sharp and defensive. Hours later, when she went to shower, I sat down at her desk and opened the drawer where she kept important documents. That's when I found it, a glossy receipt from a private cosmetic clinic. My heart pounded as I read the total, $12,400. The date matched the first mystery withdrawal. I stared at the paper, my mind spinning. Liposuction, facial fillers, body contouring, every word cut deeper. All I could think was, she used our wedding money, our shared future, to pay for surgery she didn't even tell me about. When she came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, she saw the receipt in my hand and froze. Her eyes darted from the paper to my face. "You went through my stuff," she whispered. I held up the receipt, voice shaking. "You spent our wedding fund on this." She hesitated just for a second, then said, "I did it for us. I wanted to be perfect for you." That was the moment everything inside me broke, because suddenly I realized this wasn't about love anymore. It was about control, image, and deceit, and I had no idea who I was really marrying. I didn't yell at first. I just stood there, holding the receipt like it weighed 100 pounds. Chloe was pacing, clutching her robe, her eyes darting toward the door like she wanted to run. "I did it for us," she repeated, but her voice was trembling now. "I wanted to look my best for you." "For the wedding, for me," I finally said, my voice raw. "You drained half our wedding fund without telling me for me." She crossed her arms, defensive now. "You don't get it, okay? You have no idea what it's like being compared to every perfect woman online." I just wanted to feel confident. I tried to stay calm, but my hands were shaking. "You could have talked to me, Chloe. We could have figured something out together. But instead, you lied for months." Her face hardened. "You're acting like I gambled it away. It's my body. My money, too. I contributed just as much as you." "Yeah," I said quietly. "But that was our money for our wedding." The room went silent, except for the faint hum of the air conditioner. Chloe turned away, whispering, "You're just mad. I didn't ask for permission." That word permission hit me like a slap. I realized then she didn't feel sorry. She felt exposed. "I'm not mad you changed your body," I said, my voice breaking. "I'm mad you changed the truth between us." For a second, she looked like she might cry. Then, just as quickly, her expression shifted into cold defiance. "You're making this a bigger deal than it is," she said, walking off. I watched her disappear into the bedroom, the door clicking shut behind her, and in that moment, standing there in the dim light of our half-packed apartment, I knew this wasn't just about money or vanity. It was about betrayal. And the worst part, she didn't even seem to care. The next morning, Chloe acted like nothing had happened. She brewed coffee, hummed to herself, and scrolled through her phone while I sat there, still reeling from the night before. When I finally said, "We need to talk," she sighed dramatically. "Are we really doing this again?" I already apologized, but she hadn't, not once. When I told her I felt betrayed, she tilted her head and gave me that soft, patronizing smile she used whenever she wanted to win an argument. "You're overthinking it, babe," she said. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you because I knew how you'd react. I stared at her, speechless. "That's literally the definition of lying, Chloe." She rolled her eyes, leaning back. "God, you make it sound like I cheated or something. I just wanted to feel better about myself. You're supposed to support me, not judge me." Her words twisted the knife. I wanted to shout, to make her understand. But instead, I found myself apologizing for being too harsh, for not understanding her insecurities. She wrapped her arms around me, pressing her head against my chest, whispering, "I just wanted to be beautiful for you." For a moment, I almost believed her. But then, that night, I saw her phone light up with a text from her friend. "He still doesn't know everything, right?" My stomach dropped when I asked about it. She laughed it off. "Oh my God, it's just girl talk. Don't make it weird." But something inside me cracked. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Her tears, her apologies, her explanations. Every word she said made me feel like I was the villain in my own story. And as the days went on, I found myself walking on eggshells around her, questioning my own sanity, doubting my right to be angry, because somehow she had convinced me that I was the problem. For a while, I tried to hold things together. I told myself love meant forgiveness, that maybe this was just a mistake we could recover from. But the more I tried, the colder Chloe became. She started sleeping in late, missing appointments with the wedding planner, and ignoring my messages during the day. Every time I brought up the missing money or her surgery, she'd brush it off with a sarcastic, "Still hung up on that." Then came the breaking point. I received an email from our venue manager reminding us of the final payment, except, according to them, the last installment had bounced. Confused, I logged into our shared account again. My hands went numb. The balance was almost zero. Not half, not partial. Completely drained. I confronted her that night. "Chloe, where's the rest of the money?" She barely looked up from her phone. "Relax. I needed to cover a few things." "What things?" I demanded. "Just finishing touches?" "Finishing touches," I repeated, my voice rising. "You used everything. Our venue, our photographer, they're canceling because we haven't paid." Finally, she snapped her phone shut and glared at me. "Do you know how embarrassing it is to feel ugly? To walk into a dress fitting and hate what you see? I did what I had to do, and you're acting like I killed someone." I couldn't even speak. I just stared at her, feeling something inside me collapse. The woman I was going to marry wasn't the same person standing in front of me that night. I got an email confirming the venue had released our date. No refund, no wedding. Just a note saying, "We're sorry things didn't work out." I sat there in the dark, surrounded by floral samples, invitation proofs, and a future that no longer existed. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely, utterly empty after the venue cancellation. Everything fell apart fast. Calls from vendors poured in: the florist, the photographer, the caterer, all politely reminding me that payments were overdue. Each reminder felt like another blow. I didn't have the heart to tell them the truth, that my fiancée had burned through every dollar we'd saved. Chloe, meanwhile, acted like none of it mattered. "We can just postpone," she said one morning, sipping her smoothie like we were discussing brunch plans. When I didn't answer, she added coldly, "It's not the end of the world." But to me, it wasn't just about money. It was about trust, the foundation of everything we'd built, and now it was gone. I started sleeping on the couch, partly because I couldn't stand the sight of her, partly because I couldn't sleep beside someone who felt like a stranger. Nights were quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional vibration of her phone lighting up with notifications. I'd catch glimpses, texts from friends, messages about plans I wasn't included in. One evening, I scrolled through our old photos. The smiles, the laughter, the tiny captions she wrote like we were the perfect couple. I could almost pinpoint when it started. Changing when her eyes stopped lighting up around me and started shining only when a camera was pointed her way. I realized then that I'd fallen in love with someone who loved the idea of love, not the work, not the partnership, just the performance. So I packed a small bag and left for a few days. I told her I needed space. She didn't fight me. She didn't even ask where I was going. Just said, "Fine, maybe that's best." And as I drove away that night, city lights blurring past, I wondered when exactly our love story had turned into a lie. I spent a week at my brother's place, sleeping on his couch, replaying everything in my head like a broken film reel. Every fight, every excuse, every time I'd chosen to believe her instead of my instincts. By the 7th day, something inside me had hardened. Love wasn't supposed to feel like walking on glass. I realized I wasn't mourning the loss of Chloe. I was mourning the illusion of who I thought she was. I drove back to our apartment one afternoon with a calm I hadn't felt in months. Chloe was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, looking up only when I dropped the apartment key on the table. "I think we're done," I said quietly. She blinked, then laughed. "You're calling off the wedding over this. You're being dramatic." I didn't argue. I simply handed her an envelope, copies of the clinic receipt, bank statements, and canceled vendor emails. Her face paled as she flipped through them. "You can't just humiliate me like this," she hissed. "People will talk." I met her eyes. "People should know the truth." That's when she exploded. "You're pathetic. You think you're some kind of saint? No one will believe you. They'll think you're bitter because I moved on from your boring life." I just stood there, strangely detached, watching her spiral. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done, after she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, I sat down and opened my laptop. I pulled up every receipt, every transaction, every photo of our supposed dream wedding prep. Then I opened a blank post titled, "Why I Called Off My Wedding." For the first time in weeks, my hands didn't shake. If she wanted to turn our love story into a performance, I was going to show the world what the real story looked like, unfiltered and raw. It took me hours to write the post. I wasn't trying to be cruel, I just wanted to tell the truth. I wrote about how we met, how we built our wedding fund, how I discovered the missing money, and the lies that followed. I attached screenshots of the transactions, the clinic invoice, and even messages between Chloe and her friends bragging about getting everything done before the big day. At the end, I wrote one line that summed up everything I felt. "Love isn't supposed to bankrupt your soul." I hit post, closed the laptop, and walked away. By the next morning, my phone was on fire. The post had exploded tens of thousands of comments, shares, and reactions. People were outraged on my behalf, calling her selfish, manipulative, fake. Others shared their own stories of betrayal and financial deceit. It became more than just my story. It became a mirror for thousands of others who'd been used in the name of love. Then came the real blow. Someone found Chloe's public photos, her new look, proudly displayed on her influencer page. People connected the dots. They compared the clinic receipt to her latest pictures, the timeline matching perfectly. Within hours, her comments were flooded. Sponsors pulled their deals. Her picture-perfect reputation collapsed overnight. Friends who once defended her started messaging me privately, some apologizing, others admitting they'd known bits of the truth but hadn't wanted to get involved. Every message felt like validation, but not joy. I didn't feel triumphant, just ... empty but free. By evening, my post had been picked up by a few online outlets. The headline read, "Groom calls off wedding after fiancé secretly spends fund on surgery, posts receipts online." I never imagined I'd be that guy. But as I scrolled through the comments, people thanking me for being honest, I realized something. Sometimes, telling the truth is the only revenge that matters. The aftermath was chaos. Chloe tried to do damage control, posting a tearful video on her Instagram with the caption, "Everyone makes mistakes." She claimed I'd exaggerated, that I'd twisted the story for sympathy. But the internet is unforgiving. Screenshots, timestamps, and receipts had already gone viral. People dissected every word she said, comparing it to the evidence I'd posted. Her video was flooded with comments calling out her lies. Within days, her sponsorships vanished. Brand collaborations disappeared overnight, and her follower count dropped by tens of thousands. I didn't revel in it, but I can't lie. There was a grim sense of justice watching her face the consequences she'd worked so hard to avoid. Meanwhile, people I hadn't spoken to in years reached out. Old friends sent messages like, "Man, I can't believe you went through that." And even my parents, who had once adored Chloe, called to say they were proud I stood up for myself. But not everyone was kind. Some people accused me of being petty or cruel for airing it all online. One comment stuck with me. You didn't need to destroy her. You could have just walked away. And maybe they were right. But what those people didn't see were the months of gaslighting, the emotional manipulation, the nights I sat awake wondering if I was the crazy one. Then came the twist. I didn't expect one of Chloe's close friends messaged me privately. She admitted Chloe had been planning another surgery, one even more expensive, and had intended to take out a loan in my name after the wedding. That message made everything clear. This wasn't just vanity. It was deceit layered so deeply I'd never stood a chance. I didn't respond to the message. I just sat there staring at the screen, realizing how close I'd come to marrying a stranger, and for the first time since it all began, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace months passed, and the storm slowly quieted. The viral post faded into internet history, and people moved on to the next scandal. But for me, the silence that followed wasn't empty, it was healing. I'd deleted all the old photos, returned the rings, and found a small apartment across town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. No drama, no secrets, just peace. Some nights I'd still catch myself replaying it all, her smile when I proposed, the excitement in her eyes when we talked about forever. And then I'd remember the lies, the manipulation, the way she looked at me like I was crazy for demanding honesty. That's when I'd remind myself that love without trust isn't love at all. It's just performance. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but because I wanted to understand why I let things go so far. My therapist told me something that stuck. You weren't naive, you were loyal. You just gave your loyalty to someone who didn't deserve it. That sentence rewired something inside me. I stopped blaming myself. A few months later, I heard Chloe had moved to another city, trying to rebuild her image. I didn't feel anger or satisfaction, just distance. Like watching a movie I'd already seen too many times. One evening, while walking home, I passed by a park where a couple was taking engagement photos. The photographer called out, "Now look at each other like it's forever." And I felt a strange calm wash over me, because I knew now that forever doesn't come from perfection. It comes from truth. I don't know when I'll fall in love again, but next time, it won't be about appearances or grand gestures. It'll be about honesty, small moments, and peace. Sometimes losing everything isn't the end. It's how you finally get yourself back.